Welcome, dear friend. The day is over and the night is kind. You're tucked in, warm and comfortable, and here a gentle story is waiting to carry you off to dreams. We're diving into a powerful story called The Nickel Boys. This is a tale about two young boys, Elwood and Turner, growing up in a tough world, facing challenges that test their strength, hope, and friendship. It's a story about pain, courage, and the fight to hold on to who you are, even when everything around you tries to break you down. So, grab a cozy spot, maybe a snack, and let's get into this moving story. I'm going to tell it in a way that's easy to follow, with simple words, and we'll keep it flowing smoothly from start to finish. Ready? Let's begin. The sun shines bright over Tallahassee, Florida in the early 1960s. The air is warm, thick with the scent of pine trees and the faint hum of summer. In a small house on the edge of town, a boy named Elwood Curtis sits on the floor, his ear pressed close to a record player. He's not listening to music like other kids his age. Instead, the voice of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. fills the room, strong and clear, talking about justice, equality, and standing up for what's right. Elwood's eyes are wide, his heart full of dreams. He's a smart kid, always getting good grades, always thinking about the future. He wants to be part of something big, something that changes the world, like the people marching for civil rights he hears about on that record. Elwood lives with his grandmother, Harriet, a strict but loving woman who works long hours at a hotel called the Richmond. His parents left years ago, chasing dreams that didn't include him, so Harriet is all he has. She keeps him on a tight leash, no music, no trouble, just school and work. After school, Elwood rides his bike to a corner store owned by Mr. Marconi, a kind man who lets him help out for a little pocket money. Elwood stacks comic books, sweeps the floor, and listens to the chatter of customers. He's a good kid, honest and hardworking, with a spark in his eyes that says he believes the world can be better one day. While waiting for Harriet in the hotel kitchen, the cooks play a trick on Elwood. They challenge him to a dish drying contest, promising a prize. Elwood, eager and trusting, dives in, drying dishes as fast as he can. When he wins, they hand him a dusty set of encyclopedias left behind by some salesman. It's not much, but to Elwood, it's treasure. He flips through the pages at night, reading about far-off places, history and ideas. Those books fuel his dreams of going to college, of making something of himself. Elwood's teacher, Mr. Hill, sees how bright he is. One day, Mr. Hill pulls him aside and tells him about a program at a local college. Elwood can take classes there, even as a high school student. It's a chance to get ahead, to learn more, to step closer to his dreams. Elwood is thrilled. He imagines himself in a classroom surrounded by students, learning things that will help him fight for justice, just like Dr. King. The day arrives for his first college class. Elwood wakes up early his stomach buzzing with excitement. He doesn't have a car, so he decides to hitch a ride. He stands on the side of the road, his thumb out, hoping for a kind driver. A man in a shiny green car pulls over. He's friendly, asks Elwood where he's headed, and offers to take him. Elwood climbs in, grateful, not noticing the way the man's hands grip the wheel a little too tight. They're driving along, the college just a few miles away, when red and blue lights flash behind them. A police car. Elwood's heart skips a beat, but he tells himself it's nothing. He hasn't done anything wrong. The officer steps out, his face hard, and asks the driver for papers. The man fumbles, his voice shaky. The officer's eyes narrow, and he orders them both out of the car. Elwood stands on the hot asphalt, confused, as the officer searches the vehicle. Then the words hit him like a punch. The car is stolen. The driver, it turns out, isn't just a kind stranger. He's a thief. Elwood tries to explain. He was just hitching a ride. He didn't know the car was stolen. But the officer doesn't listen. His eyes slide over Elwood, cold and unyielding. In this time and place, being black is enough to make you guilty. The handcuffs snap around Elwood's wrists, and before he knows it, he's in the back of the police car, the world he dreamed of slipping away. The judge's gavel falls like a hammer. Elwood is sentenced to a reform school called the Nickel Academy. He's driven there in a state vehicle, handcuffed, sitting beside two white boys who got in trouble for smaller things, skipping school, breaking a window. The officer calls Elwood a car thief, and the words burn. He wants to shout that it's not true, but his voice stays locked in his throat. He's scared, but he holds on to the hope that Nickel might not be so bad. Maybe it's a place where he can keep his head down, work hard, and get out. When they arrive, Nickel looks almost nice. The campus has green lawns, neat buildings, even a football field. It feels more like a school than a prison. Elwood's hope flickers brighter. Maybe this won't be the end of his dreams. A man named Superintendent Spencer greets them. He's tall, white, with a voice that's calm but heavy, like it carries a warning. He jingles a keychain in his hand, and something about it makes Elwood's stomach twist. The boys are split up. The white boys go one way, and Elwood is led to a different part of the campus, the black side. Everything is separate here, just like the world outside. The clothes he's given are worn and faded, nothing like the crisp uniforms the white boys get. He's taken to a dormitory called Cleveland, a long room filled with rows of bunk beds. The air smells of sweat and old wood. Other boys watch him, some curious, some sizing him up. Elwood tries to stay calm, but he can't help the tears that sting his eyes as he lies in his bunk that first night. Outside, a loud grinding noise cuts through the dark. A machine maybe, or something worse. He doesn't know. The next morning, a boy named Desmond shows Elwood around. Desmond is quiet, friendly enough, but he talks like someone who's learned to keep his head down. He shows Elwood the classroom, and Elwood's heart sinks. The books are old, the lessons basic, nothing like the advanced classes he dreamed of. He asks the teacher for harder work, but the man just shrugs. Nickel isn't about learning. It's about work, hard labor, like cleaning, hauling, or fixing things. Elwood is assigned to the yard crew, working under the hot sun with a boy named Jamie, who gets shuffled between the black and white campuses because of his light skin. Desmond tells Elwood the rules: do what you're told, earn merits, climb the ranks from grub to explorer to pioneer to ace. If you're good, you might get out early. Elwood nods, thinking of Dr. King's words about dignity and perseverance. He decides he'll be good, follow the rules, and get back to his life. But deep down, he feels a flicker of doubt. Something about Nickel doesn't feel right. Days pass, and Elwood learns the truth about this place. The boys aren't just working, they're trapped. The staff watch them like hawks, quick to punish. Elwood hears whispers about a place called the White House, where boys are taken for beatings. The white boys call it the ice cream factory because of the bruises, purple, blue, red, that bloom on their skin afterward. Elwood tries to stay out of trouble, but trouble finds him. One day in the bathroom, he sees a small boy named Corey being pushed around by two bigger boys, Lonnie and Black Mike. Elwood can't just stand there. He steps in, telling them to stop. Black Mike swings, his fist catching Elwood's jaw. A white houseman sees the fight and writes down all their names. That night, at 1 a.m, heavy footsteps echo in the dormitory. Superintendent Spencer and a man named Earl grab Elwood, Corey, Lonnie, and Black Mike, dragging them out into the dark. They're taken to the White House, a small building that smells of damp concrete and fear. Inside, Elwood is shoved onto a mattress. The first blow comes fast, a leather strap, thick and heavy, cracking against his back. He screams, but the sound is drowned out by an industrial fan that hums like a monster. The strap falls again and again, tearing his skin, sending pain shooting through his body. He loses count of the blows, his world narrowing to agony. When it's over, he's carried back to the dormitory, barely able to move. For days, Elwood lies in the infirmary, his body bruised and aching. He thinks about Dr. King's words, about loving your enemies, but the idea feels impossible now. How can you love someone who does this? When he finally returns to the dormitory, he meets a boy named Turner. Turner is different, sharp, cynical, always watching. He's been at Nickel longer and knows how it works. He tells Elwood to keep his mouth shut, to play along, because fighting back only makes things worse. Turner becomes Elwood's friend, the one person he can trust in this place. They talk late at night, whispering in their bunks. Turner tells stories of the outside world, of places he's been, things he's seen. Elwood shares his dreams of college, of joining the civil rights movement. Turner listens, but his eyes say he doesn't believe in dreams anymore. Nickel has a way of stealing them. Elwood gets a new job called community service. He and Turner ride in a van with a man named Harper, a young white staff member. They're supposed to deliver supplies to the black boys at Nickel: food, medicine, clothes. But Harper takes the supplies to local businessmen instead, trading them for envelopes of cash. Elwood watches, his stomach turning. He starts writing it all down in a notebook. Every deal, every name. He doesn't know what he'll do with it, but he feels like he has to do something. Nickel isn't just corrupt, it's cruel. Boys disappear sometimes, taken out back for punishment, and never seen again. Elwood hears about a secret graveyard, hidden somewhere on the campus, where those boys might be buried. He doesn't want to believe it, but the fear is real. Every day, he sees the way the staff treat the black boys worse than the white ones. The food is worse, the work harder, the beatings more frequent. It's a place built to break you, to make you forget who you are. One year, Nickel holds a boxing match between the best black fighter and the best white fighter. This time, the black boxer is a big, mean kid named Griff. Elwood and Turner hear rumors that Superintendent Spencer has ordered Griff to lose on purpose, to let the white boy win. Griff doesn't want to, but he's scared. The night of the fight, the whole school watches. Griff fights hard, his fists flying, but in the third round, he goes down, pretending to be knocked out. The crowd roars, but Elwood sees the shame in Griff's eyes. A few days later, Griff is taken out back. He never comes back. Elwood can't take it anymore. He writes a letter, pouring out everything he's seen. The beatings, the stolen supplies, the boys who vanish. He plans to send it to the authorities to expose Nickel for what it is. Turner warns him not to, says it's too dangerous, but Elwood can't stay silent. He believes in justice, in doing what's right, even if it costs him. One night, Turner overhears Spencer talking about Elwood. They know about the letter. They're planning to kill him, to make him disappear like the others. Turner grabs Elwood and tells him they have to run. Now, they slip out of the dormitory, hearts pounding, and sprint across the campus. The night is dark, the air heavy with the threat of rain. They climb a fence, thorns tearing at their skin, and keep running toward a pair of trees in the distance that Turner says mark the edge of Nickel's land. Shouts echo behind them. Flashlights cut through the dark. Elwood's legs burn, but he keeps going, driven by the hope of freedom. Turner is faster, pulling ahead, urging Elwood to hurry. They're almost there, almost to the trees, when a gunshot cracks through the night. Elwood stumbles, pain exploding in his chest. He falls, the ground cold and hard beneath him. Turner turns back, his face twisted with fear. But it's too late. Elwood's eyes close, the world fading to black. Years pass. The man we thought was Elwood Curtis steps off a plane in Tallahassee. His real name is Jack Turner. He's older now, living in New York, running a moving company, trying to build a life. But he's never forgotten Nickel, or the boy whose name he took. When he reads in the newspaper about a secret graveyard found at the Nickel Academy, he knows he has to go back. He has to tell the truth. Turner walks into a hearing, one of the few black survivors of Nickel willing to speak. The room is quiet, the air heavy with the weight of what happened. He tells the story of Elwood Curtis, his friend, who believed in justice, who tried to do right, and who paid the ultimate price. He talks about the beatings, the corruption, the boys who never made it out. His voice shakes, but he keeps going, because Elwood would have wanted him to. As he speaks, Turner thinks about the life he's lived since that night. He took Elwood's name, trying to honor his friend by living up to his ideals. He's tried to be good, to be brave, to make a difference. But the pain of Nickel is always there, like a scar that never fades. He thinks about all the boys who could have been something. Doctors, teachers, leaders. If Nickel hadn't stolen their futures. When the hearing ends, Turner steps outside. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He feels lighter, like he's finally set something free. He knows the world hasn't changed enough, that injustice still lingers, but he also knows that telling the truth is a start. For Elwood, for all the Nickel boys, he'll keep fighting in his own quiet way. And that's the story of the Nickel boys. It's a story about a place that tried to break young lives, about two boys who found strength in each other, and about the courage to stand up even when it's hard. Thanks for listening, everyone. This one's heavy, but it's important. Let me know in the comments what you think. And if you want me to tell more stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next one. Now, let's dive into another relaxing story called The Cold Millions. In the sleepy old town of Spokane, nestled in a valley where the air carried the faint scent of pine and coal, two brothers, Rye and Gig, carved out their lives under a sky that seemed to hold its breath. Rye, the younger, was a slight figure with eyes that glimmered like the surface of a still pond, always lost in quiet thoughts of a softer, kinder world. Gig, his older brother, stood tall with a spark in his gaze, his voice a low rumble that could stir a crowd, full of dreams about fairness and a life where every worker's sweat counted for something. They had no one but each other, their family long gone, like whispers on the wind. So they clung together, two souls tethered in a world that felt both vast and heavy. Spokane hummed with the rhythm of labor, men trudging to mines and mills, their boots scuffing the dirt roads, their hands calloused from endless hours wielding picks and hammers. The town was split like a cracked stone. Workers lived in sagging shacks, their clothes patched and thin, while the wealthy lounged in grand houses on hills, their windows glowing with warm light, their pockets heavy with gold. Gig, restless and bold, joined the free speech fights that swept through the streets like a gentle tide. He'd climb onto rickety crates, his words flowing like a river, calling for unions and rights, his voice weaving hope into the chilly dusk. Rye lingered at the edges, his heart thumping softly, torn between fear and loyalty, watching his brother shine like a lantern in the fog. One autumn evening, as the sun sank low and spilled golden light across the rooftops, a crowd gathered in the town square. Men and women stood shoulder to shoulder, their breath visible in the crisp air, listening to speakers whose words rose and fell like a lullaby. The ideas of change floated gently, wrapping the listeners in a shared dream. But then came the clatter of boots and the sharp bark of orders. Police swept in, their faces stern under peaked caps, batons swinging like pendulums. They grabbed speakers and listeners alike, pulling them into wagons that rattled away into the night. Gig, caught in the surge, was hauled off, his voice muffled but unbroken, leaving Rye alone in the square, his hands trembling as he whispered promises into the cold. Days crept by, slow and thick, like honey dripping from a spoon. Gig sat in a damp jail cell, the walls slick with moss, sharing stories with other prisoners. Their laughter echoed faintly, like the memory of a summer storm, and they sang old folk tunes about home and fields, their voices blending into a soothing hum that made the stone walls feel less hard. Rye wandered the misty streets of Spokane, his coat too thin for the growing chill, seeking ways to free his brother. He met Ursula, a singer whose voice was as warm as a fireside, her songs drifting through the theater like a gentle breeze. She performed with a tame cougar, its eyes glowing softly in the stage light, purring as it curled at her feet. Ursula's smile was kind, her laughter light, and she offered Rye a spark of hope, her words as comforting as a lullaby. Rye also crossed paths with Lem, a wealthy man whose polished shoes clicked on the cobblestones, his eyes sharp and secretive, like he held the town's truths in his velvet-lined pockets. Then there was Elizabeth, a woman with fire in her heart and starlight in her eyes, who marched for justice with a steady step, her voice clear and warm, urging workers to stand tall. She moved through the crowds like a breeze through tall grass, her presence calming yet fierce. Rye took to riding the trains that snaked through the misty forests outside Spokane, their wheels humming a steady, sleepy song against the rails. The trees stood tall and silent, their branches swaying as if sharing secrets with the wind. The air smelled of wet earth and pine, and the moon cast a silver glow over the fields that stretched endless and quiet. Rye dreamed of the cold millions, the glittering wealth that seemed to hang just out of reach, like frost sparkling on a winter morning, beautiful but fleeting, slipping through fingers like fine sand. In the jail, Gig wove tales of adventure and hope, keeping spirits high among the men crowded in the dim cells. They passed the time with quiet games, carving marks into the walls, their voices low and rhythmic, like a heartbeat in the night. Rye, meanwhile, worked odd jobs, hauling crates, sweeping floors, each coin he earned clinking softly in his pocket, a small promise of freedom. His body ached, his eyelids grew heavy, but his steps remained steady, guided by the thought of Gig's smile. Winter arrived, wrapping Spokane in a quilt of snow. The world hushed under its weight. The streets sparkled under gaslights, and the air was sharp with the scent of burning wood. Rye found himself drawn into whispers of bigger plans, meetings in smoky backrooms where candles flickered, casting shadows that danced like sleepy spirits. Men spoke of strikes and rallies, their words flowing slow and deliberate, like a river finding its way. Rye listened, his breath catching, feeling the weight of something larger than himself. There were moments of quiet danger, chases through dark warehouses where crates loomed like silent giants, their echoes soft and muffled. Rye hid in haylofts, the sweet scent of straw filling his lungs, the rustle of mice, a faint lullaby. He moved through the town like a shadow, his steps light, his heart steady but weary. Ursula slipped him coins and secrets, her laughter a soft chime that lifted his spirits. Lem watched from his high office, his pen scratching papers that rustled like dry leaves, his plans hidden behind a smooth smile. Elizabeth led marches, her signs held high, her voice a warm thread weaving through the cold. One starry night, when the world was still and the snow muffled every sound, Rye crept to the jail. The guards dozed in their chairs, their breath slow and even, the keys glinting faintly at their belts. Rye's hands were steady as he tossed a rope over the wall, the fibers rough against his palms. Gig climbed out, his movements quiet, his eyes bright in the moonlight. They ran through the sleeping streets, past houses where lamplight glowed softly, their shadows blending into the night. But freedom was a fragile thing, trailing them like a lazy dream. They fled to the countryside, where fields lay under blankets of frost, cows grazing with slow, deliberate steps. Barns smelled of hay and earth, their wooden beams creaking gently in the wind. The brothers hid there, whispering plans under the stars, their voices low and soothing, like a bedtime story told by firelight. The sun rose each morning, slow and golden, painting the world in hues of warmth, while birds sang melodies that drifted like clouds. The past, though, was a patient hunter. Men in suits came asking questions, their boots crunching on the gravel roads. Trials unfolded in courtrooms with high ceilings and polished benches, the judges' voices calm and measured. like a clock ticking in a quiet house. Witnesses spoke, their stories rising and falling like gentle waves, painting pictures of struggle and hope. Rai stood before them, his words simple, his voice steady, speaking truths that felt as soft and certain as a well-worn blanket. As spring crept in, bringing soft blooms and warm breezes, the brothers found a kind of peace. Gig settled into a small house, where he read books by a crackling fire, the pages turning with a gentle rustle. Rai walked the old paths of Spokane, the cold millions fading like morning dew, no longer a weight on his heart. The town stirred with small changes. Workers gained fairer wages, their lives weaving together like threads in a warm quilt. The air smelled of new grass, and the river flowed lazily, reflecting a sky that seemed to hum with quiet promise. And so, under a vast and gentle sky, Rai and Gig drifted into restful days, the world turning slow and serene. Their dreams floated upward, light as dandelion seeds, carried by a breeze that whispered of home and hope, lulling the heart into a deep, unbroken sleep. Now, let's move to a story called The Sisters Brothers. The morning mist hung low over the Oregon wilderness, curling around the towering pines like a whispered secret, softening the edges of the world. The air was cool, heavy with the scent of damp earth and cedar, and the only sounds were the steady plod of hooves and the occasional creak of leather saddles. Eli and Charlie's sisters rode side by side, their silhouettes faint against the gray dawn. Two men, bound by blood and circumstance, drifting through a land as wild as their hearts. It was 1851, a time when the promise of gold turned men into ghosts, chasing dreams that shimmered just out of reach, and the sisters' brothers were no strangers to the shadows that followed such dreams. They were hired men, guns for the Commodore, a man whose name was spoken in hushed tones, his wealth built on the bones of those who crossed him. Their latest task was simple in its brutality: find Herman Kermit Warm, a prospector who'd struck it rich, and take what was his gold, his life, whatever the Commodore demanded. The younger sat heavy in his saddle, his broad frame slouched, his eyes tracing the horizon not for danger, but for something softer, something he couldn't quite name. His horse, Tub, was a stubborn, way-backed creature, more loyal than swift, and Eli loved him with a quiet devotion that felt foolish even to himself. He'd brush Tub's flank at night, murmuring soft words when the fire burned low, the world reduced to the crackle of embers and the vast starlit sky. Charlie, leaner, sharper, rode a few paces ahead, his hand never far from the pistol at his hip, his jaw set like a man who'd already decided how the day would end. Charlie was the leader, always had been, his mind quick, his temper quicker. He drank too much, laughed too loud, and killed without hesitation. But there was a crack in him, a fracture Eli glimpsed in the rare moments when the whiskey ran dry and the night grew too still. They didn't speak of it. They rarely spoke of anything beyond the job, the trail, the next town, but the silence between them was heavy, weighted with years of blood and loyalty. The trail stretched, long and winding, leading them from Oregon City towards San Francisco, a journey that felt less like a hunt and more like a slow unraveling. The forest closed around them, the pines so dense the sunlight barely touched the ground, casting dappled shadows that danced across their path. Rivers rushed cold and clear, their waters glinting with the promise of gold, and mountains loomed in the distance, silent and unyielding, like judges watching their every step. They passed miners along the way, men with gaunt faces and hollow eyes, their hands calloused from panning, their hearts burning with a fever that left them empty. Eli watched them, wondered what it was like to chase a dream instead of a man. He was tired, not just in his bones, but deeper, in the marrow of his soul, a weariness that grew with every job, every life taken, every night spent staring into the fire. He dreamed sometimes of a different life, a small house with a warm hearth, a woman's laughter, soft in the evening air, a bed that didn't creak under the weight of guilt. But Charlie didn't dream, or if he did, he kept it hidden, locked away behind his sharp grin and sharper aim. He was all forward motion, a river that didn't know how to stop. In a small town called Mayfield, they stopped for supplies. The saloon, a dim haven of smoke and murmured voices. The air was thick with the sour tang of unwashed men and spilled whiskey, the kind of place where hope came to drown. Charlie drank, his laughter cutting through the haze, his charm drawing eyes like moths to a flame. Eli sat quiet, nursing a single glass, his gaze drifting to the warped wooden floor, the stains telling stories of fights and forgotten nights. A woman approached, her eyes tired, her dress faded but clean, her smile practiced yet brittle. Eli turned her away, his voice gentle but firm, and she drifted to Charlie, who pulled her close, his hand on her waist, his voice loud with easy charm. Eli watched, wondering when his brother had become a stranger, or if he'd always been one, hidden behind the familiarity of blood. The night ended in chaos, a miner's taunt, a flash of fists, Charlie's knuckles bloody, a broken nose left behind. Eli pulled his brother out before the sheriff could stir, and they rode into the night, the town fading into the dark. Another place they'd never see again. The trail grew harder, the air thinner, the nights colder. Tub stumbled one morning, his legs swollen, and Eli spent an hour kneeling in the dirt, rubbing liniment into the horse's flank, his hands gentle, his voice a low murmur. Charlie watched, leaning against a tree, his silence heavier than words. There was a flicker in his eyes, respect, maybe, or pity, but he said nothing, just mounted his horse and rode on. They were close to San Francisco now, the city a distant hum of promise and peril. Its name whispered in every saloon, every trading post. Stories of warmth drifted to them like smoke, tales of a man who'd found a secret, a way to pull gold from the earth like magic. The Commodore wanted it, whatever it was, and the sisters' brothers were his hounds, sent to fetch. San Francisco burst into view like a fever dream, a city swollen with ambition, its streets a churn of mud and madness. Tents and shacks lined the roads, their canvas walls flapping in the salty breeze, while men shouted, laughed, wept, their voices blending into a cacophony of want. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of sea and sweat, and the brothers moved through it like shadows, their presence noted but not welcomed. They found a man named Morris, the Commodore's scout, in a boarding house that smelled of damp wood and despair. Morris was soft-spoken, educated, with a nervousness that made Charlie smirk. He spoke of warmth, said the prospector had gone to the gold fields, a place called the Black Hills, and he wasn't alone. There was something about warmth, Morris said, something different, a fire in his eyes that wasn't just greed. Eli listened, felt a stir of curiosity, but Charlie was already planning, his mind on the job, the kill, the next step. They rode out again, the city falling away, the trail leading to a river where warmth was said to be. The Black Hills were quiet, the kind of quiet that felt alive, as if the earth itself were holding its breath. They found Warm's camp at dusk, a small fire flickering against the gathering dark. Two men hunched over a strange contraption of vials and tubes. Warm was small, wiry, his eyes bright with a fevered intelligence that seemed to burn through the twilight. The other man, Mayfield, not the town, but a chemist, a partner, looked up, startled, his hands trembling as if he sensed the danger in the air. Charlie drew his pistol, his movements smooth, practiced, but Eli hesitated, something in Warm's face stopping him. The man didn't run, didn't beg, just looked at them, calm, as if he'd been expecting them all along. Warm spoke, his voice steady, almost hypnotic, cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. He told them of his discovery, a chemical that lit up the river, revealing the gold hidden in the silt. It wasn't magic, he said, just science, but it felt like something more, something that could change the world. Charlie scoffed, his finger still on the trigger. But Eli listened, really listened, his heart stirring with a longing he hadn't felt in years. Warm offered them a deal. Work with him, share the gold, leave the Commodore behind. It was a risk, a betrayal, a leap into the unknown. But Eli felt the pull of it, the chance to be something other than a killer, a shadow in the Commodore's employ. They stayed the night, the four of them around the fire, the river rushing soft in the darkness, its waters whispering secrets of their own. Warm spoke of his past, a life of books and ideas, a world so far from the one Eli knew, where men didn't live by the gun, but by the mind. Mayfield was quieter, nervous, his eyes darting to the shadows, but he nodded along, his hands clasped tight to still their trembling. Charlie drank, said little, but Eli could see the wheels turning in his brother's mind, weighing the gold against the risk, the Commodore's wrath against the promise of something new. The fire burned low, the night stretching out, and Eli lay awake, staring at the stars, wondering if a man could outrun his past. The next day, they tested Warm's chemical, pouring it into the river, watching as the water glowed, gold glinting like stars scattered across the surface. It was real, undeniable, and for a moment, Eli believed in something bigger, something good. The four of them worked together, their movements slow, deliberate, the air heavy with possibility. But the world doesn't let men like them dream for long. The chemical was dangerous, its fumes stinging the air, burning the skin. Mayfield's hands blistered, his face pale with pain, and Warm's cough grew worse, his breaths shallow, his eyes still bright but shadowed now. Charlie grew restless, his patience thinning, his trust in Warm fraying like an old rope. Trouble came at dusk, a group of prospectors stumbling on their camp, their eyes wild with greed, their hands gripping rifles. Words turned to shouts, shouts to gunfire, and the air filled with the sharp crack of pistols and the cries of men. Eli fought, not for gold, but for survival, his hands steady even as his heart raced, his body moving with a muscle memory born of too many fights. Charlie was a whirlwind, his pistols barking, his face alight with a savage joy. When the dust settled, the prospectors lay dead, their blood soaking into the earth, their dreams of gold extinguished. The camp was in disarray, the contraption broken, the air thick with the acrid stench of the chemical. Warm was worse now, his skin blistered, his cough a wet rasp. Mayfield was shaking, his nerve gone, and Charlie's eyes were hard, his patience spent. They tried again, one last pour of the chemical, desperate to salvage the dream. But it was too much. The river burned, the fumes choking, and Warm collapsed, his body folding into itself, his breaths coming in shallow gasps. Mayfield panicked, ran into the night, and Charlie went after him, his footsteps heavy with purpose. Eli stayed with Warm, kneeling beside him, the river glowing faintly in the dark, its light a cruel mockery of their hopes. Warm spoke, his voice weak but clear, talking of hope, of a world where men didn't have to kill to live. where science could lift them above the dirt and blood. Eli held his hand, felt the life slip from him, and when warm breath stopped, the quiet was louder than any gunshot. Charlie returned, his hands bloody, Mayfield gone. They stood over Worm's body, the gold forgotten, the river dark once more. Eli felt the weight of it, heavier than ever, a burden he could no longer carry. Charlie spoke of the next job, the next town, but his voice was hollow, his eyes distant. They rode back, Tub limping worse than before, the trail stretching out like a sentence they couldn't escape. Eli thought of Worm, of the life he'd glimpsed, and wondered if he could go back to the man he was, the killer, the shadow. In Oregon City, the Commodore's men were waiting, their eyes cold, their hands ready. Eli faced Charlie, his voice steady, and said he was done. He expected a fight, a flash of his brother's temper, but Charlie just nodded, like he'd known it was coming, like he'd felt the same weight all along. They parted under a grey sky. No words for what lay between them, just the sound of hooves fading into the mist. Eli rode alone, Tubbs' steps slow but steady, the trail stretching out to nowhere. He didn't know where he was going, only that he was done running, done killing. The world was still wild, still cruel, but there was a quiet in him now, a peace he'd never known. Somewhere, a river ran clear, its waters free of blood and gold, and Eli rode toward it, not chasing dreams, but seeking something softer, something true. Now, we're diving into another interesting story called All the Light We Cannot See. In the quiet streets of Paris, where the air carried the faint scent of blooming chestnut trees and the distant hum of the Seine, there lived a young girl named Marie-Laure Leblanc. She was 6 years old when the world began to fade from her sight, the colors blurring like watercolors washed away in the rain. Her father, Daniel Leblanc, worked as the master locksmith at the Museum of Natural History, a vast building filled with wonders from the earth and sea, shells that whispered of oceans, stones that held the secrets of mountains, and creatures preserved in glass that seemed to dream of forgotten times. Daniel was a gentle man, with calloused hands from turning keys and crafting tiny mechanisms, and he loved his daughter more than the stars he could no longer show her. As Marie-Laure's vision dimmed, Daniel built her a world she could touch. He carved a miniature model of their neighborhood, every street and building shaped from wood, smooth under her fingertips. "Feel the curve of the road here," he would say softly, guiding her small hands over the ridges and grooves. "This is the bakery where the bread smells warm in the morning. And here is the bridge where the water sings below." She learned to navigate by counting steps, by listening to the echo of her cane against the cobblestones, and by imagining the light she could no longer see, the golden glow on rooftops at dawn, the silver shimmer of leaves in the wind. At night, He read to her from books in Braille, his voice steady like a lullaby, telling tales of adventurers and scientists who explored the hidden corners of the world. Far away in a coal mining town called Zollverein in Germany, another child grew up in the shadows. Werner Pfennig was an orphan, living in a children's house with his younger sister, Jutta. The air there was thick with dust from the mines, where men toiled deep underground, their lamps flickering like distant stars in the dark. Werner had white hair like fresh snow and eyes as blue as the sky on a clear day. He was curious about everything: how machines worked, why birds sang at dawn, what made the world hum with invisible energies. One evening, while scavenging in the trash heaps behind the houses, Werner and Jutta found a broken radio, its wires tangled like vines. With careful fingers, Werner fixed it, twisting the knobs until a voice crackled through the static. A French professor speaking of light and waves, of things unseen but felt in the air. The radio became their window to the world. At night, huddled under blankets, they listened to stories of science and music, the professor's voice warm and inviting, like a fire on a cold evening. All the light we cannot see, the voice seemed to whisper, speaking of radio waves that traveled invisibly, connecting distant souls. Jutta dreamed of faraway places, her dark hair falling over her eyes as she sketched pictures of the things they heard. Werner dreamed of building things, of understanding the mysteries that buzzed in the ether. But the world outside was changing. Whispers of war crept in like fog, and the mines called for more workers, their shadows growing longer each day. In Paris, Marie-Laure turned 12 as the shadows of war reached France. The Nazis marched in, their boots echoing like thunder on the streets. Daniel packed their bags in haste, hiding something precious in his belongings: a diamond called the Sea of Flames, entrusted to him by the museum. It was said to be cursed, granting eternal life to its keeper, but bringing misfortune to those around. Daniel didn't believe in curses, but he guarded it carefully, perhaps the real one or a replica no one knew. They fled to Saint-Malo, a walled city by the sea, where Daniel's uncle Etienne lived in a tall house overlooking the waves. Saint-Malo was a place of ancient stones and salty air, where the ocean breathed in and out against the walls. Etienne was a reclusive man, scarred by the Great War, his mind haunted by memories of trenches and lost brothers. He rarely left his home, but he had a secret: a powerful radio transmitter hidden in the attic, from which he broadcast lessons on science and nature, the same ones Werner had heard as a child. Etienne's housekeeper, Madame Manek, was a sturdy woman with a kind heart, her hands always busy with bread and chores. She welcomed Marie-Laure and Daniel, her voice like the rustle of leaves in a gentle breeze. Daniel built another model for Marie-Laure, this time of Saint-Malo, with its twisting alleys and high walls. She traced the streets with her fingers, memorizing the path to the bakery, the feel of the grotto by the sea, where waves whispered secrets. The days passed in a rhythm of quiet exploration. Marie-Laure collecting shells on the beach, their surfaces ridged like braille, listening to the gulls cry overhead. Daniel worked on locks and puzzles, always watching over her, his love a steady light in the growing darkness of the occupation. In Germany, Werner's talents drew attention. At 14, he was sent to a brutal school for the elite, the National Political Institute at Schulpforta, where boys were trained to be soldiers for the Reich. The place was cold and unforgiving, with drills at dawn and lessons in loyalty. Werner befriended Frederick, a boy who loved birds and dreamed of freedom, his spirit as fragile as a sparrow's wing. But cruelty lurked there. Frederick was beaten for his weakness, his mind shattered like glass. Werner buried his doubts, focusing on radios and triangles, on the science that promised escape. His sister Jutta wrote letters pleading with him to remember who he was, her words fading like echoes in the wind. As the war deepened, Daniel was arrested in Saint-Malo, accused of spying. He vanished into prisons, his letters growing sparse until they stopped. Marie-Laure was left with Etienne and Madame Manek, her world shrinking to the house by the sea. Madame Manek joined the resistance, baking codes into loaves of bread, her defiance a quiet fire. Marie-Laure helped in small ways, her blindness a shield in the shadows. When Madame Manek fell ill and passed, like a leaf falling softly in autumn, Etienne stepped forward. Together they broadcast messages for the Allies from the attic radio. Marie-Laure, reading codes hidden in stories, her voice traveling across the waves. Werner, now in the Wehrmacht, traveled Europe with a unit hunting illegal radios. Led by the giant Folkheimer, they traced signals through forests and cities, the work staining Werner's soul. He saw innocents fall, their lives extinguished like candles in the wind. In Vienna, a mistake cost a young girl her life, her memory haunting him like a ghost in the night. Yet he pressed on, his mind filled with equations and frequencies, dreaming of the French professor's broadcasts from childhood. In Saint-Malo, a Nazi gemologist named Sergeant Major Reinhold von Rumpel arrived, hunting the Sea of Flames. Sick with illness, his obsession drove him like a storm. He questioned Marie-Laure, her calm replies hiding the truth. She had found the diamond in the model house, tucked inside like a secret heart. Etienne was arrested soon after, leaving Marie-Laure alone as bombs began to fall. The Allies besieged Saint-Malo in August 1944, the sky filled with leaflets fluttering like snow. Marie-Laure hid in the cellar, the diamond in her pocket, its weight a quiet burden. The city trembled under explosions. walls crumbling like old memories. Werner's unit was trapped in a hotel basement, rubble pinning them in darkness. Volkheimer, strong and silent, shared stories to keep hope alive. Werner repaired a radio from scraps, tuning through static until he heard a girl's voice. Marie-Laure, broadcasting from her attic, reading from 20,000 leagues under the sea, her words a lifeline in the void. She pleaded for help, unaware Von Rumpel lurked in the house, searching room by room, his steps heavy on the creaking floors. Marie-Laure hid behind a wardrobe, her heart beating like waves against rocks, playing records to mask her presence. Werner listened, enchanted, recognizing the house from his earlier surveillance. He had seen her once, a blind girl with grace like a bird, and chosen not to report the signal. Now, in the trapped darkness, he knew he must save her. With a grenade, Werner and Volkheimer blasted free, the air thick with dust and freedom. Werner rushed to the house, confronting Von Rumpel in the shadows. A shot rang out, but Werner prevailed, the gemologist falling like a shadow dispersed by dawn. He called to Marie-Laure, his voice soft through the floorboards. She emerged, cautious, their hands meeting in the dim light, two souls connected by invisible threads. They shared canned peaches in the attic, talking of radios and books, of light unseen. Werner told her of his sister, of the mine's deep dark. Marie-Laure spoke of her father, of shells that held the sea's song. As the city burned outside, they found peace in each other's stories. She gave him the key to the grotto where she left the diamond to be claimed by the waves, ending its curse in the ocean's embrace. Werner led her to safety, parting with a kiss like a promise whispered in the wind. He was captured soon after, falling ill in a prison camp. In delirium, he stepped into a field, a mine, exploding like a final sigh, his life fading into the light he had chased. Years passed, the war a distant echo. Marie-Laure lived in Paris with Etienne, studying snails and seas, her touch revealing worlds. Jutta, Werner's sister, received his belongings, a model house with a hidden key. She traveled to France, meeting Marie-Laure, their shared memories bridging the past. Jutta's son played with puzzles, his curiosity a spark from Werner's flame. In the end, the light they could not see lingered, in radio waves crossing oceans, in hearts mended by time, in the quiet beauty of lives intertwined. The sea rolled on, carrying secrets deep, and the world turned softly toward dawn. But let us linger a while longer in the memories, for the story unfolds like a gentle dream, with more layers to uncover. Recall the early days in Paris, when Marie-Laure first lost her sight. The doctors spoke in hushed tones, their words floating like mist. But Daniel refused to let despair settle. He took her to the museum each day, letting her fingers trace the contours of fossils, the spirals of nautilus shells that echoed the universe's design. "The world is full of wonders," he said, his voice a soothing current. "Even in darkness, there is light, in the warmth of the sun on your skin, in the scent of rain on the earth." She learned Braille quickly, her mind hungry for stories. Jules Verne's tales became her favorites, adventures under the sea where captains explored depths unknown. At night, Daniel crafted puzzle boxes, intricate wooden creations that required patience to open, revealing tiny treasures inside: a pebble from the beach, a feather light as air. Marie-Laur's laughter filled the apartment, a sound like bells in the breeze. Across the border, Werner's life in Zollverein was harder, the orphanage a place of thin soups and shared beds. Frau Eleanor, the caretaker, sang French lullabies to the children, her voice a balm against the cold. Werner fixed things for everyone: clocks that ticked unevenly, lamps that flickered, but the radio was his true love. When the Nazi rallies began broadcasting, Jutta covered her ears, sensing the poison in the words. "Promise me you'll stay, you," she whispered to Werner one night, her hand in his. At Schulpforta, the school molded boys into weapons. Drills in the rain, fists in the dark. Werner endured, his mind escaping to formulas and circuits. Frederick pointed out birds in the sky, their wings cutting graceful arcs. "They're free," he said, envy in his voice. But freedom was fragile. One night, the boys were forced to pour water on Frederick in the snow, his body breaking under the cruelty. Werner's guilt was a heavy stone, carried silently. In Saint-Malo, the sea was a constant companion, its roar a lullaby. Marie-Laure walked the ramparts, wind tangling her hair, imagining the horizon where sky met water. Madame Manek taught her to bake, flour soft under her hands, the oven's heat a warm embrace. The resistance meetings were whispers in the kitchen, women planning small acts of rebellion, like jamming locks or hiding messages. Marie-Laure felt the thrill, her blindness making her bold. When Daniel disappeared, his absence was a void. Marie-Laure touched the model, tears tracing her cheeks, but she grew stronger, like a tree rooted deep. Etienne, once lost in his fears, found purpose in the broadcasts. "We must shine light where we can," he told her, his hand trembling on the transmitter. Werner's unit roamed like ghosts, through Russia's snows, Ukraine's fields. Volkheimer protected him, a giant with a gentle soul, sharing rations and silence. The signals they hunted were lifelines for others, and each destruction weighed on Werner. In a village, a girl's violin played before the end, its melody haunting his dreams. Von Rumpel's pursuit was relentless, his body failing but his will iron. He collected gems like trophies, the sea of flames his obsession. In Saint-Malo, he moved like a shadow, questioning neighbors, his cough echoing in alleys. The bombing was a storm of fire and stone. Marie-Laure, curled in the cellar, hunger gnawing, but she climbed to the attic, broadcasting her plea. "He is here," she said, voice steady, playing Clair de Lune, notes floating like moonlight. Werner's rescue was a blur, climbing stairs, facing the enemy, then holding Marie-Laure, her trust a gift. They spoke through the night, sharing dreams. "What do you want to be?" she asked. "Free," he replied softly. After parting, Marie-Laure walked through ruins, the air acrid with smoke, but hope stirred like dawn. In 1974, she touched snails in the museum, her son playing nearby. Yutta's visit brought closure. The model house, a bridge across time. And so the story drifts on, like waves lapping shores, full of light unseen, in friendships forged in darkness, in curiosities that endure, in the quiet resilience of the human spirit. Let us explore further, delving into the nuances of their worlds, expanding the tapestry with gentle details. Imagine Paris in 1934, the year Marie-Laure's sight fully departed. The streets were alive with vendors calling out, horses clopping on stone, the aroma of fresh croissants mingling with coal smoke. Daniel carried her on his shoulders to the Jardin des Plantes, where flowers bloomed in riots of scent, roses sweet and heavy, lavender calming like a sigh. He described the world in whispers. The leaves are green as emeralds, the sky blue as the sea. She built pictures in her mind, vivid and alive. At the museum, the halls echoed with footsteps, cabinets filled with marvels. Marie-Laure touched a tiger's skull, its teeth sharp reminders of wild power. The director told stories of the Sea of Flames, a blue diamond with a red heart, mined from distant lands. "It protects its owner," he said, "but curses others with endless sorrow." Daniel laughed it off, but Marie-Laure wondered, her imagination sparking like fireflies. In Zollverein, the mines groaned like beasts, men emerging black-faced and weary. Werner and Jutta climbed slag heaps, finding bits of wire and glass. The radio's first broadcast was music, a violin weeping softly, filling their room with emotion. "It's magic," Jutta breathed, her eyes wide. Werner nodded, determined to unlock its secrets. As war loomed, Paris tensed. Sirens wailed in drills, people hoarding food. Daniel prepared, building hidden compartments in his models. The flight to Saint-Malo was by train, crowded with refugees, the air thick with fear. Marie-Laure clutched her cane, the diamond's weight unknown to her in Daniel's bag. Saint-Malo's walls were ancient, battered by centuries of tides. The house at number 4 Rue Vauberel was tall and narrow, rooms filled with books and dust. Etienne's voice was soft, broken by war's echoes. He spoke of his brother Henri, who died in the trenches, their radio broadcasts a legacy of wonder. Madame Manek's stews warmed them, herbs from the garden, adding flavor like memories. Daniel's arrest came suddenly, a knock at dawn, soldiers' voices harsh. Marie-Laure hid, heart pounding, but he was gone. His last touch, a kiss on her forehead. Letters arrived at first, speaking of cold cells and hope, then silence. The resistance grew in whispers. Madame Manek organized women, old widows with fierce hearts, painting V's for victory, disrupting supplies. Marie-Laure delivered bread with codes baked in, her steps careful on uneven stones. When Madame died, her body frail from illness, the house felt emptier. But Etienne rose, his agoraphobia yielding to purpose. Broadcasts became their weapon. Marie-Laure read numbers disguised as recipes, Etienne transmitting to the night. The radio hummed, waves carrying hope across seas. Werner's school was a fortress of stone and ideology. Bastien, the commandant, barked orders, his face twisted in scorn. Werner excelled in math, Hauptmann praising his designs for triangulating signals. Frederick's bedwetting led to humiliation, boys forcing him into the cold. The beating came during a lesson, prisoners tossed from heights, Frederick refusing to participate. That night, attacks left him broken, sight gone, mind wandering. Werner visited Frederick in Berlin, the city buzzing with flags and fear. Frederick fed birds, his mother protective. "Do you ever wish to fly away?" Frederick asked, voice distant. Werner left, guilt coiling like smoke. Falsified papers sent Werner to the front at 16. His unit's truck rumbled through lands scarred by war, Volkheimer humming old tunes. They destroyed radios, lives ending in bursts. In a forest, a partisan's signal led to a house, a woman and child inside. The shot echoed, Werner vomiting in the snow. In Saint-Malo, Werner traced the broadcast, recognizing the professor's style. Hiding in a closet, he watched Marie-Laure through a crack, her grace captivating. He lied to his team, protecting the signal. Van Rumpel's illness gnawed, tumors spreading. He traced the diamond's path, interrogating jewelers, his dreams filled with its blue fire. In Saint-Malo, he entered homes, questions sharp as knives. The siege began, with planes droning overhead, bombs falling like rain. Marie-Laure gathered water, hid the bread, then retreated to the cellar. Hunger came softly, thirst sharper. She climbed to the attic, opening the model, placing the diamond in the sea grotto via broadcast clue. Von Rumpel entered, steps methodical, searching. Marie-Laure hid, breathing shallow, playing the record loud. He realized the model was empty, rage building. Under the hotel, Werner and Volkheimer waited, Bernd dying slowly. The radio crackled with Marie-Laur's reading, Captain Nemo's Adventures. Her voice, clear and brave. "Help," she added. "He is trying to kill me." The grenade blast freed them, Werner running through smoke-filled streets. At the house, he shot von Rumpel, the body slumping. "It's safe," Werner called. Marie-Laure descended, cane tapping, trust building in words. They ate, talked. Werner of Jutta's drawings, Marie-Laure of her father's puzzles. He fixed the radio, music playing softly. Dawn came, parting inevitable. She left the diamond in the grotto, key to Werner. "Live," she said. Captured, Werner sickened in camp. Visions of Frederick and the girl blending. A moonlit walk, a mind's click, then peace. Post-war, Marie-Laure studied, her life full of touch and sound. Etienne lived long, memories fading gently. Jutta married, her son Max, curious like Werner. Visiting Marie-Laure, they shared the model, tears mingling with laughter. In 2014, Marie-Laure walked Paris, old but alive, thinking of radio waves still traveling space, carrying voices eternal. But the story has more depths, like the ocean's layers. Let us expand on the characters' inner worlds, their dreams and fears, to weave a longer tapestry. Marie-Laure's blindness was not darkness, but a different sight. Sounds painted pictures, the drip of rain on leaves, the flap of pigeon wings, the distant toll of bells. In Paris, she visited the museum's mineral room, fingers on crystals that hummed with energy. The Sea of Flames story fascinated her, a stone from Borneo, cut in Amsterdam, said to make its owner immortal, but doom loved ones. Just a tale, Daniel said, but she felt its pull. On the train to Saint-Malo, crowds pressed, voices anxious. Marie-Laure clutched her book, braille pages worn. Arrival brought sea air, sharp and clean, waves crashing like applause. Tien's house creaked with age, attic full of wires and tubes. He showed her the transmitter, his brother's legacy. Henri spoke of stars and cells, he said, voice cracking. Broadcast resumed, Marie-Laure listening, imagining listeners in far lands. Madame Manic's resistance was everyday heroism, slipping notes, sabotaging trucks. Small acts make big changes, she told Marie-Laure, hands kneading dough. After Daniel's arrest, Marie-Laure explored alone, cane guiding, mind mapping. She found the grotto, water cool, shells crunching underfoot. Werner's journey was marked by loss. Leaving Jutta, her tears wet on his shirt. At school, nights were long, boys snoring, his mind racing with problems. Hauptmann's lab was a sanctuary, soldering irons hot, circuits glowing. Frederick's fate broke something in Werner. Visiting, Frederick didn't recognize him, feeding crumbs to sparrows. The weakest are culled, Hauptmann said, but Werner doubted. In the unit, Volkheimer shared giant strength, telling tales of home. Neumann 1 and 2 joked, but war wore them. Tracing signals, Werner saw maps in his head, lines converging. In Saint-Malo, the house drew him. Hiding, he ate from tins, watching. Marie-Laure's routine, bakery, beach, seemed poetic. The bombing's chaos, fires roaring, stones tumbling. Trapped, Volkheimer sang, voice deep. Werner's repair was meticulous, fingers steady. Hearing Marie-Laure, her French accent like the professor's, stirred childhood memories. The grenade's boom, freedom's rush. Confronting von Rumpel, gun heavy, shot decisive. Marie-Laure's emergence, tentative touch. Their night, stories flowing like rivers. Werner described snow in Zollverein, coal dust black. Marie-Laure spoke of museum halls, echoes long. Parting at dawn, city smoldering, hope dawning. Werner's end was swift, mind wandering to Jutta, Frederick, Marie-Laure. Marie-Laure's life bloomed. University, research on mollusks, their shells spirals of beauty, marriage, a child, grandchildren, the diamond forgotten, perhaps washed to sea. Jutta's path, teaching, family, Max's questions echoed Werner's, their meeting, hands clasping, stories shared, light enduring. To make this tale even lengthier, let us delve into specific scenes with expanded descriptions, sensory details, and internal monologues, creating a soothing, immersive narrative. Begin with Marie-Laure's childhood in Paris. The apartment was small, walls papered in fading flowers, the scent of wood polish and books. Daniel's workbench was cluttered with tools, tiny screws, delicate keys. When her sight failed, colors first, red apples turning gray, blue sky fading, then shapes, until only shadows. She cried at first, but Daniel held her. We'll find new ways to see. He took her to the museum daily. The guard greeted them, voice gruff but kind. In the gallery of comparative anatomy, she touched elephant bones, massive and smooth. Imagine its trunk like a river, Daniel said. Birthdays were special. The puzzle box for her 7th, twists and slides, opening to a braille book. Joy like sunlight. The rumor of war. Newspapers rustling. Voices worried. The museum prepared, packing treasures. The diamond arrived, locked in a safe. Daniel received it, or a copy, sewn into his coat. The invasion. Sirens wailing, feet running. Packing in night, Daniel's voice calm. The train rattled, bodies close. Marie-Laure sleeping on his lap. Saint-Malo's arrival, sea smell strong, wind whipping. The house door creaked, Etienne's steps hesitant. Welcome, he murmured. Touch light. Model building. Daniel carving late, wood shavings curling. Marie-Laure learned fast. Streets becoming familiar. His arrest, soldiers banging, accusing espionage for measuring the city. Marie-Laure hid under bed, heart thumping, gone. Letters, first hopeful, then desperate. Silence. Madame Manec's illness, cough worsening, bedridden. Marie-Laure held her hand, skin cool. Death quiet, like sleep. Etienne's transformation, climbing attic. Transmitter warming. Broadcasts. Marie-Laure reading Verne. Voice steady. Werner's side. Orphanage cold. Children hungry. Frau Elena's stories of France. Eyes distant. Radio discovery. Trash heap glinting. Wires fixed with care. First sound. Crackle. Then voice. Joy exploding. School entry. Test rigorous. Answers flowing. Arrival. Gates tall. Boys uniform. Drills. Running till breath short. Cold showers. Hauptmann's favor. Lab nights. Designing transceiver. Pride mixed with fear. Frederick's friendship. Bird watching. Laughs shared. The incident. Prisoner jump. Frederick's refusal. Beating. Fists. Boots. Blood. Visit. Frederick blank. Birds his world. Front. Truck bouncing. Lands changing. Hunts. Signals pinpointed. Doors kicked. Shots. The girl in Vienna. House quiet. Child clutching doll. Mistake realized too late. Horror endless. Saint-Malo assignment. City beautiful. Walls golden in sunset. Signal strong. Familiar. Watching Marie-Laure. White cane. Confident steps. Decision not to report. Heart shifting. Siege. Leaflets falling. Soft as rain. Bombs. Earth shaking. Dust choking. Trapped. Darkness absolute. Air stale. Burned groans fading. Radio repair. Parts scavenged. Hands trembling. Her voice. Reading of submarines. Please. Grenade. Blast deafening. Light piercing. Run to house. Streets rubble strewn. Fires flickering. Von Rumpel. Eyes mad. Gun raised. Struggle shot. End. Marie-Laure. Steps down. Voice questioning. Trust. Built slowly. Conversation. Hours passing. Connection deep. Parting. Kiss brief. Memory eternal. Capture. Camp wire. Illness feverish. Step into field. Explosion. Release. Aftermath. Marie-Laure rescued. Etienne freed. Paris return. Life rebuilding. Juta's visit. Model opened. Key found. Stories exchanged. Healing. 14. Marie-Laure old. Thinking of waves. Light. Invisible but present. Now, let's dive into our last story of this video, The Book Thief. We're exploring a tale that's as haunting as it is beautiful, a story that weaves together love, loss, and the quiet power of words. So let's step into the world of The Book Thief. This is going to be a long, immersive journey. So let's lose ourselves in the narrative, letting it unfold like a soft, sleepy dream. Picture a small town in Germany, tucked away in the shadow of a world spiraling into chaos. It's the late 1930s, and the air carries the weight of war, fear, and unspoken dreams. In this world, we meet a young girl named Liesel Memminger. She's not quite 10 years old, with a spark in her eyes that refuses to dim, even as life tries to snuff it out. Her story begins on a train, rattling through the snowy countryside. She's with her mother and her little brother, Werner, heading toward a new life. But the journey is heavy. Liesel's mother is pale, her hands trembling, and Werner, small, fragile Werner, is too quiet. The cold seeps into the train carriage, and before Liesel can grasp what's happening, her brother's breath stops. Just like that, he's gone. The train halts, and two gravediggers bury him in a shallow, snowy grave by the tracks. It's here, in this frozen moment, that Liesel's life shifts forever. One of the gravediggers drops a book, a small, tattered thing called The Gravedigger's Handbook. Liesel, not fully understanding why, picks it up and clutches it close. It's her first act of thievery, though she doesn't know it yet. That book becomes her anchor, a piece of the brother she lost, a tether to a moment that changed her. Her mother, unable to care for her, hands Liesel over to a foster family in Mulching, a small town on Himmel Street. Heaven Street it's called, though it's far from heavenly. The houses are cramped, the people are worn, and the war looms like a storm cloud over everything. Liesel's new parents are Rosa and Hans Huberman. Rosa is a stout woman with a sharp tongue, her words like slaps. But beneath her gruff exterior, there's a heart that beats fiercely for those she loves. Hans, though, is different. He's a painter by trade, with silver eyes and a gentle soul. He plays the accordion, filling the house with soft, lilting melodies that seem to hold the world at bay. From the moment Liesel arrives, scared and grieving, Hans becomes her safe harbor. He sits with her during her nightmares, teaching her to read in the quiet hours of the night, using that stolen gravedigger's handbook as their guide. Words become Liesel's refuge. She's hungry for them, craving the way they fit together, the way they can paint pictures and tell stories. Hans teaches her patiently, letter by letter, word by word, in the basement of their small home. The walls down there are cold, the air damp, but it's where Liesel begins to see the power of stories. She's not just learning to read, she's learning to survive. Each word is a brick, building a wall between her and the pain of losing her brother, her mother, her old life. Mulching is a town of ordinary people living in extraordinary times. Liesel makes a friend in Rudy Steiner, the boy next door with hair the color of lemons Hawkins. Rudy is bold, brash, and always chasing adventure. He's got a heart as big as his dreams, always asking Liesel for a kiss she never quite gives. They run through the streets together, kicking a soccer ball, stealing apples from orchards, laughing under the shadow of the war. Rudy becomes her partner in crime, her confidant, her almost something more. Their friendship is a bright spot in the grayness of mulching, a reminder that joy can still exist, even when the world feels like it's crumbling. But the war creeps closer. The swastika banners hang heavy over the town, and the Hitler Youth meetings pull Rudy and the other children into a world of chants and salutes. Liesel doesn't understand it all, but she feels the tension, the way people whisper about the Führer, the way fear threads through every conversation. She keeps stealing books, though, snatching them from piles meant for burning, slipping them from the mayor's wife's library. That's Ilse Hermann, a quiet woman with sad eyes who leaves her window open as if inviting Liesel to take the books. Each stolen volume is a treasure, a world to escape into. Liesel reads them to Hans, to Rosa, even to the neighbors during air raids, her voice steady as bombs rumble in the distance. Words, she learns, can hold people together when everything else falls apart. Then there's Max. He arrives one night, a shadow at the Hubermans' door. Max Vandenberg is a Jew, a young man with tired eyes and a fist-fighting spirit. Hans owes Max's father a debt from the Great War, so he and Rosa hide Max in their basement. It's dangerous. Hiding a Jew in Nazi Germany could mean death for all of them. But Hans and Rosa don't hesitate. Max becomes part of their family, sleeping on a mattress in the basement, painting over the pages of Mein Kampf to create a book of his own for Liesel. He's a storyteller too, weaving tales of shadow creatures and star-filled skies. Liesel reads to him, shares her stolen books, and they become each other's strength. Max is weak from hunger and fear, but his spirit burns bright, and Liesel clings to that light. The war doesn't stay distant forever. Air raids shake mulching, forcing families into shelters, huddling in the dark as Liesel reads aloud to keep the fear at bay. She sees the world changing. Rudy's father is drafted, the town's boys march off to fight, and Max eventually has to leave, slipping away into the night with a promise to return. Liesel keeps stealing books, keeps reading, keeps holding on to the stories that make her feel alive. She writes her own story too, in a black notebook given to her by Ilse Hermann. It's called The Book Thief, and it's her life, her brother, her parents, Rudy, Max, the words that saved her. She writes in the basement, pouring her heart onto the pages as if writing can keep the world from breaking. But the world does break. Himmel Street is bombed, the houses reduced to rubble in a single night. Liesel survives, pulled from the wreckage, but Rosa, Hans, and Rudy don't. The loss is a weight she can't carry, yet she does. She's found, clutching her notebook, her story, and it's all she has left of them. Later, she's taken in by the mayor and Ilse Hermann. She grows up, carries her grief, and keeps her words close. Years pass, and Liesel builds a life, a family, a world beyond mulching. Max finds her again, older but alive. Their reunion a quiet moment of healing. And all through her life, she remembers the books she stole, the stories she told, the way words held her together when everything else was gone. That's the heart of The Book Thief. It's a story about a girl who found strength in words, who stole books to steal back her life. It's about love, between a foster father and daughter, between friends running through the streets, between a hidden man and the girl who read to him. It's about loss, about war, about the way stories can shine even in the darkest times. Liesel Memminger's tale reminds us that words have power to heal, to connect, to keep us human. Thanks for joining me on this journey through The Book Thief. If this story touched you, drop a comment below, share your thoughts, and let me know what other stories you'd love to hear about. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell so you never miss a video. Until next time, keep reading, keep dreaming, and I'll see you in the next story.